in 2007. We're a studio producing most of everything you see at mydamnchannel.com, originally with top talent from entertainment and some pretty hot newcomers. And we distribute that content widely to places that include YouTube, where we're going to be launching one of the premium channels pretty soon there.
My name's Graham Bennett. I work for YouTube, currently in the content partnerships team on the original programming side, so content that goes first to the web. Before that, I worked for BBC New Media in the UK.
Hi, I'm Kurt Marvis. Digital consultant is code for unemployed. I was previously, up until the end of the year, the president of digital media for Lionsgate, where I was responsible for things like our channel partnership on a channel called BeFit, which is a fitness channel, responsible for...
Wait a minute.
Bite Me is a real show. You'll understand the slip. You'll understand the slip when I come to the next one. Bite Me, a program that we're co-producing right now with Machinima, and a number of other social games projects, et cetera. My role there was driving revenue through the digital space via programmings, games, et cetera, not in terms of the theatrical marketing and that side of the business. And previous to that, I was a founder of a company called Cinema Now, which was one of the very early companies distributing movies and TV over the internet. So I've been in the space for longer than I'd care to remember.
Before there was an internet.
Before there wasn't. I invented the internet also, I forgot.
Thank you, Al.
Yeah.
Jordan Hoffner. I started my own company back in September, which is a strategy consulting and advisory firm focused on entertainment, media, and technology companies. I work with large companies, helping them solve problems with regard to digital media and how to expand, whether that's through organic business growth or mergers and acquisitions. I work with a portfolio of small seeded Series A, maybe Series B companies in terms of how they're going to, helping them usher them into the media and entertainment space, working with the bigger companies, and then also work with a lot of venture capital and private equity firms about their portfolio companies and bringing them investments in the media and entertainment space.
Cool. So I think that what I'd love to accomplish with this panel today is figuring out what scheduling and programming online means. And it's a really important question because in the traditional television world, those functions were fulfilled by, or are fulfilled, those functions are fulfilled by the networks. And producers go about their day and they make programming and they hand it to the network, and there's a methodology that's been in place for half a century that gets programs out into the world. Online, that's not the case. You are the programmer, you are devising your schedule, and with an ability to interact, there's a lot of options on the table. So my first question is, and I'll throw it to everyone, is there a formula to scheduling content in an on-demand world, and is that formula different in reality programming and scripted programming? So are you thinking about the content when you're scheduling? Graham, why don't we start with you?
So, I mean, the most obvious thing is that there's no prime time in online, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't organize and think and structure the release of programming. We see repeatedly with successful YouTube partners that they're partners who post regularly on a schedule, and it varies from content to content, but I think no less than once a week is a good kind of guide. And it's important because although there's no prime time, people are creatures of habit. And what you're trying to build with an ongoing program, whatever genre it's in, is repeat behavior and a habit forming for people to come back and see the new show. And it definitely works. I know a lot of partners who get grief from their subscribers if their video is late. And it doesn't matter whether it's posted at Friday at 8 p.m. or Wednesday at 11 p.m. If that's when they expect it, that's when you should schedule it. And it gives you a good promotional window if you do that, because everyone can drive to that right at the same time.
Rob, you've got shows like Wainy Days, you've got Daily Grace. How do you program or schedule against the different kind of content? And why don't you talk about what those shows are?
I will. Well, I spent a tremendous part of my life programming radio stations and MTV and VH1 and lining it up minute by minute, second by second, hour by hour. And, you know, I think for a lot of us that have been doing this since the '06 timeframe, there really wasn't much logic to it. I believe in the next couple of years, as Graham said, the amount of original content online is so drastic that I think programming is the essential piece of what's got to happen next. Pull defined everything online. The power became in the hands of the audience. But I think that as creators and studios and distributors, we've also got to bring some of the old push back into it. And so we're going to be programming a new live show every single day in partnership with YouTube. But we split our content between major comedy series like Wayne Days, which is created and run by David Wayne, who we've been doing that with since 2007. We roll those out almost like an HBO series. You know, that's our big, high-profile kind of show that'll happen on the same day every week like television. And then Daily Grace is an example of someone at My Damn Channel that works in that YouTube model of daily content. I don't think she's missed a day since 2008. And that builds an audience over time, which is essential in the YouTube universe. But on the kind of television part of our brain, we're working really like an HBO or a Showtime, putting major shows on a big platform, and then something I know we'll get to, promoting the hell out of them so that they can be found in the way that you might find something on an HBO.
And is the strategy different between platforms? So if you're living on an owned and operated site like mydamnchannel.com as an example, or YouTube, are you strategizing differently? Are you leveraging that platform unique to that platform, or are you just pumping it out into the world the same way?
Well, I mean, we've, for the last couple of years, been experimenting with, companies like Boxy and Roku, and I think in the end, it really comes down to the people running outlets like YouTube that have to really devise and design new home pages that can present content to the audience in a way that is going to work both for the portal and the producer. And that's something that you see changing rapidly at places like YouTube and even at some of the outlets like Boxy and Roku. I mean, maybe you want to talk about the new look and feel.
Well, so I don't know how many people are aware, but so we have spent a lot of time along with these funded channels initiatives working with our product and engineering team to overhaul the whole of YouTube. So it is not one homepage now for everybody. It's an individual homepage for every person who comes along and signs in, and as individual as we can make it if you're not signed in. And we think that's really important for the future, because from our point of view, the cable channel or the entertainment channel for the future should be personal for you. Everyone likes different stuff. You shouldn't have to select from a preset of collected channels or a preset of content. People like random collections of stuff, crochet and marine fishing and action sports. Like, it's possible for you now to program a guide for yourself with all of those things in, or whatever it is that you're interested in. So Toby was saying this from Yahoo in another panel. We're trying to give scale to the niche. So you would never be able to do this, right, in traditional media, and it's something that you can do in digital because there's effectively endless shelf space. So you can create very focused, passion-centered channels that may not have millions and millions of viewers, but will have a highly focused and highly engaged user base that is then very attractive to advertisers.
So is there an opportunity for broad content, or is it all going niche?
I mean, from a strategic overall standpoint, I actually think that it's funny. I had this conversation with a couple of people that what tends to do well at least on YouTube and also online, are things that serve an underserved market. So, if you look at a lot of Asian-focused content, that does really, really well on YouTube because it's really not on television. And so I think these are the types of things that people, when you come to scheduling and programming, is okay, who are those underserved markets, and then how do you attack them? And because there's no shelf space, there's no cable operator saying, oh yes, we will give you channel 248 or whatever it is.
Sure.
So.
But do you guys think that American Idol, as an example, the largest show in television's history, can a property like that emerge again, or are we going down a path of total stratification of audience going forward?
I mean, I absolutely think an American Idol can exist within the online environment. I think and we'll talk about this perhaps a bit more later, but the challenge is what Jordan was just talking about, which is shelf space. There's unlimited shelf space. And so the scheduling and programming challenge with unlimited shelf space becomes, perplexing at best. And, to echo what's been said, I think people are used to frequency and expectations about, they know something's coming. Even if you're DVRing, Mad Men, a new show is coming on that week regardless of when you choose to watch it. I think that in terms of what's happening digitally is that niche will be able to perform at even a higher level than it has on cable, in just the same way cable gave it the opportunity to go further than it was in the network environment. So I think that's just the next iteration. But I think in terms of an American Idol type phenomenon with, as Graham is well aware, and probably most people in the room are aware, YouTube's numbers on mobile, on pads and mobile devices are just hockey sticking, and they are for everybody. And so when you've got that kind of expectation of scheduling into those platforms, I think, I was just talking to someone yesterday about this, and I'll use Mad Men as an example. Mad Men's really built in 5 8-minute chunks or whatever it is to fit into the commercial breaks. So if you had that show at that quality, at that level, with that writing, with that acting, coming out available across all wireless devices at 12 o'clock Eastern time, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, so that you knew, because basically shows are built in dramas so that there's a commercial break, cliffhanger of some sort. You go to that and you're watching that each day. I guarantee you at 12 o'clock Eastern time, you'd see half the people walking around like this staring at their phone, even though they could see it later because they'd want to see that next episode.
So if you were to put Mad Men online, that's how you'd program it. Act breaks every day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, I wouldn't want to use, as an example, yeah, I think rather than specifically say Mad Men, I would say I think the 1 hour drama as it's seen in traditional TV could fit very well into a once a day 8-minute segment in the mobile pad-based world. And you could see it everywhere else as well, but to that audience specifically. And then on the weekends, you'd see all the 5 episodes together. It all sits on demand, so it plays on. And your expectation is next Monday, I've got a new 8-minute episode that's coming on. And I think at that level, with the kind of viewership numbers that you get, it's absolutely possible to create an American Idol level phenomenon.
Okay. I am curious, Kurt, from one of the things that always fascinated me about what you were doing at Lionsgate is the amount of revenue that was driven from digital distribution. So did you find with some of the original stuff and then the library stuff, did you find that the way that you would put that content into the world on Hulu, through a platform like YouTube, Netflix, et cetera, that there was a science to how it was distributed, or was it really just trying to figure out what was going to drive the most revenue as you saw it happen?
Well, the conflicts between traditional distribution and digital distribution have been pretty well documented in terms of shifting windows, price points. Has Netflix helped the industry? Has it hurt the industry? Has it hurt package sales? Has it helped package sales? And, we experimented a lot over the last 4 years. Lionsgate continues to experiment today in terms of Abduction is coming out on a pre-DVD window for VOD. So there's a lot of stuff that's shifting in that regard. I think the real answer is no one really knows yet still. It's hard to sort of parse the data and figure out. You can look at it and say, well, this worked better in VOD than it did than we thought it would, but it's hard to tell what the impact is on DVD. Is it up or down? Is it because the business is dropping off, et cetera? So I think the driver on the digital side, in the traditional digital, I'll call it, which would mean the Netflix, Hulu's, iTunes, et cetera, was to leverage the marketing campaign that was available for the traditional world.
Okay.
That was really what was driving it. And the reason you see the window shrinking is as these tentpole movies come out and they have, $100 million of marketing thrown against them, you still want to try to capture as much of that fallover as you can before people have forgotten it and moved on to the next thing.
All right, so with online originals, putting out a new show, nobody's heard of it before, you want to get it out into the world in the right way. How important is the promotional component when compared to the content?
More important.
More important.
More important. At least $1 for $1. Every dollar you put in content, you got to put $1 in some sort of marketing.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. And nobody's really doing it. And I think it's a hard thing. And this is where we started. If there's no programmer and no network before who's managing that programming and looking at what is playing on the other networks and what time things should be best released, then as content producers and production companies, you have to have some kind of audience development plan for that content. You've heard the stats here today, like on YouTube, everyone knows this. You're a drop in the ocean if you just post the video. You have to have a plan to amplify that launch. And the programming and things that we were talking about actually feeds into that, because what you're giving people is a habit and a behavior where they can go find the show, and actually there's an amplified signal, right, of everyone going and watching the new content. But to get that first set of traction, you really, really have to have audience development. And we've done for all our new channels, all the pitches that we had, we asked for concrete audience development plans from everybody who came and pitched to us.
What kind of audience development plan worked most for you guys?
So we're a platform, and we don't know exactly all the things that are going to work within channels. We view our role as trying to step back a little bit out of this and give you guys, as the content creators, the tools to engage directly with your audience. And honestly, we don't care where that is. There are hundreds of millions of views of YouTube videos on Facebook. You should be using that. You should be using Twitter. You should be using your owned and operated sites. You should be, if you have legacy audience on other platforms, leverage that. You have to get your content seen so that you get the traction of subscribers and you start to build that repeat viewing. And then, of course, you start to build those social signals that we're looking at now in the new YouTube, right? What if your friends are watching this episode too? The other shows that they're looking at, who's tweeting about, who you're following, the videos that those people are tweeting about, those will all fit into the signal too of what we will recommend to you on YouTube.
I mean, look, it's just like launching any product. I mean, the reason why most of the people are here is because advertising supports television, because those advertisers are launching products, whether it's a new car, a new dish soap, whatever it is. I mean, I don't know what the dollar for dollar, for every dollar that's spent on a movie budget, how much advertising promotion goes, but it's
Sometimes more than the movie costs.
so that's the point. I mean, you're launching a new product when you're launching a new show, and the channels may be different, like Graham was saying, but there's got to be investment. It's just too big now.
See, and I think, and I'm supposed to meet with Graham afterwards. He may not meet with me after I say this. This is part of the dynamic that shifted and changed. In that, in the traditional world, when we deliver a show to Showtime or whoever, TBS or whoever it is, they're marketing that program. They're the network, they're the delivery company, and you may be frustrated with how they've done it. They might not do it the way you want, but they are the ones who are responsible for this. And one of my beefs with YouTube on the new channel launches was, great, $100 million for programming, that's wonderful, but is there $200 million for marketing it? Because that's what you're going to need in order for people to be able to find it in this, sea or sometimes cesspool of content that what's good
Okay,
and
so-
what...
Respectfully.
Graham, you want to go out for drinks afterwards?
No, but I'm just saying...
You're
there's so
free
much-
after this. So
I'm just
had a
saying,
meeting come up.
I'm just saying there's so much, I mean, they just came out with this.
Yeah.
60 hours of video uploaded every minute.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insane. And you know, most of it is not something that's really going to be of interest. So how do you rise up around that to be noticed? And by the way, I think their approach is spot on and dead on in what they did to require the channel partners to have their own marketing programs, because this is the changing dynamic. You have to do your own audience. You have to find your own audience.
Yeah.
Well, and
So
find
we're
them.
not, yeah, I mean, and this is the distinction, and it's a fair point. And yes, we will do marketing. We do like, you know, B2C marketing of YouTube all the time, but it's a lot less likely, given the volume of content, given the whole of the rest of the content on the platform, beyond even just the channels that we're talking about here, that we have to support. And our view is that we have to do things that are generic enough and across a broad enough swathe of the platform that they lift all boats, because really we're a technology platform, we're not a network. And it is a
No, I
real
agree.
paradigm shift, right, for content creators and production companies. But there are really smart ways to do it. And digital content, you know, digital programming, in my view personally, should be built with the social media as part of the programming. And that's how you get a head start in this space. And in many cases, even in pitches that we saw, and definitely in my experience from traditional TV, the social media is this buzzword add-on at the end. It's like the content first. Content first is okay, but you've got to have a really embedded audience development plan. And if that means that you can embed it into the content as much as possible, so, you know, even things, right, as simply, like off the top of my head here, is having talent within your shows be responsible for creating, right, pages and Twitter feeds, and a responsibility for pushing out content and talking about it, and, you know, and engaging people about it.
It's easy, you know, for every content creator to bitch about not getting enough funding, enough money, enough promotion. We've looked at it from day one, and this was mentioned earlier. I like the phrase of dollar for dollar. We've looked at it as, you know, it's just too competitive. And so with us, every single project, every single series is its own business. And we've got to lay out a business plan for that that says if there's an investment coming either from My Damn Channel or from YouTube or from a client like Subway, we've got to look at all of those dollars on the whole and make sure that there's enough money to do, and you mentioned some of them, and I'll add on some others, enough money to, you know, do really great marketing, really great PR, social media, pay for it, staff it correctly, talent. You know, we've stolen the oldest pages out of the oldest playbook, which is more often than not only have big talent, but have talent that works with other talent that's already exploding in digital. That's one of the ways to really get a leg up, and all of that comes under the kind of big M of marketing. But it is, you know, unfortunately dependent on the content creator to largely create their own hits and be an animal about every single launch of every single show, because we just can't rely on the AOLs, the Yahoos, the YouTubes to do it for us. There's too many of us.
And
Sorry, Graham. Would you ever put, and I'd like to hear all of your thoughts on this, would you ever
The
put
MSNs, sorry. left them out.
a talent, an actor, in a show that is not as good for that role as someone who is better because they have a Twitter following or because they have an audience?
Well,
would you ever, and it's a very real question that I think is asked every day.
I never would because to me the content is everything. So, you know, the reason why sometimes we're not all, you know, sexier and have thousands of people lined up out the door is because there isn't the Sopranos, the Seinfeld, that moment hasn't happened yet. But I agree with Kurt that it can and it will. And when that happens, it happens because people are focused first on make the best content. I would never, force somebody into a show because they had a Twitter following. But what I will say is it helps if it's the right fit creatively. We've found that brands, especially advertisers, really want to know: is there an actor in your show with that magic 1.6 million Twitter followers? And he said it publicly, so I won't out our friend Michael Ian Black because he's so honest about his Twitter followers. Michael, Michael is a fantastic, brilliant, funny guy and really talented. And if you're not following him, you should. Michael has that magic 1.6 million, which seems to be, for a lot of people, the high water mark. And he's really honest about it. He said, look, I was out there early as talent who got in there, and then I was promoted like the YouTube of old, and that helped a lot. But what he said on a panel like this is, let's say 10% of those people still really, really watch me every day. That's 160,000 super engaged people in everything he has to say every couple of hours. Brands like that a lot. Yeah, so when a guy like Michael fits well into My Damn Channel series, yeah, we're going to be super interested in doing that, but never as a force and never.
It's part of the consideration, but not the driving force necessarily.
Right.
How do you feel about it?
Ashton Kutcher, 2.5 Men. I mean, he has one of the largest Twitter followings in the world, right? I don't think he was hired into that role solely because of his fit, and they had to replace that actor very quickly.
That's a good point.
It was between him and Kim Kardashian. They needed a guy. So.
Or bringing Charlie back and saying they were sorry. Yeah.
The word channel is thrown around a lot. I certainly use it a lot. It means something very different online than it does in television. You're not turning to a particular dial. Some shows are channels in themselves. What is the definition of that word?
I think it's a home. Ultimately, I mean, it's a place where if you're a producer or if you have a single property, this is your home. And so when YouTube came out with asking for channels, they were really looking for a home where a content idea or set of ideas can revolve and sit around, and where people can go to visit that home. I think that's the way you really have to look at it. It's pretty simple. It's My Damn Channel is the home for My Damn Channel, or My Damn. Is it redundant? So, but I think these are the way you really have to think about it. It's your place. If you had your little section of the world, this is what it's going to look like.
See, for me, I don't really like the channel vernacular. I call them micro networks. Mm-hmm. That's my own thing that I use because that's how I view them and that's how I can make sense out of them. And so, or specialized networks. I mean, that's to me what YouTube has launched with this new initiative, and I think that YouTube is not a network. YouTube is an MSO. They're a global MSO, and that's where going back to the previous discussion, where it becomes problematic because not only are they a global MSO like Comcast or Time Warner or whoever, their whole, the slogan was broadcast yourself. So the whole premise of the company started on equality of distribution. Anybody can throw something up there, and you get the same distribution that anybody gets. And that was kind of the beauty and magic of it. And so the introduction, I mean, as Graham well knows, the introduction of these premium offerings, whether it's pay-per-view movies or whatever it may be, has always been hugely challenging at YouTube because it's kind of antithetical to what the whole business was launched on. And so I think when I look at say our BFit fitness channel, it's a specialized network, a micro network. It's targeting very specific content, but it's programmed and scheduled, to your first question, pretty much exactly as we would a traditional network mixed with on-demand capabilities.
So specifically for YouTube, of course, from this point of view, channel, as most of you will know, channel used to be the account, right, that you had, that you needed to sign in, and when you signed in, you got this page that you might use or might not use, and you couldn't really program very well. What we've tried to do with the new channels, and maybe we should have come up with a different name, but it's so ingrained right within the media vernacular. The channel is the smallest set of content that someone will subscribe to, right, and pin to their guide on the platform and stay tuned in and stay subscribed to.
So just so I understand, because I don't know that I understood that.
I don't know that I explained it very well.
Is the channel your page, right? Like your
Account.
So the channel maybe I shouldn't have gone back into the history, but that's how it used to be. But now a channel a channel is a set of content. It's the home, as Jordan was saying, for the set of content, and it's that what your users, your followers, your viewers subscribe to, and it's the new content and the activity around that channel that gets pushed to your subscribers, right? And there's a feed now on the homepage that's another huge change, right? That just has recent content from all the stuff that you're subscribed to. Not just necessarily uploads, or you can set it to that if you want, but hey, also all this other social media activity that's happening, videos you're creating, other videos you're liking. And that's a really important tool as well for this kind of audience development things that we were talking about, because you can use that to partner up formally or informally with other channels to start to build the kind of, networks on YouTube that Kurt's talking about, to cross-promote each other, to collaborate, to just throw, if you had a new show coming out and Jordan was working with someone in a related area and they didn't have a show coming out, they could throw, promotion to Rob in return, quid pro quo for later on, he would promote their channel.
Well, it's like Machinima. Machinima isn't a channel. Machinima is a network of a
Yes.
group of
There are-
individual channels, with those individual channels being made up of lots of individual programs.
There are a lot of formal content networks, which are basically just sets of channels who formally work together to collaborate, cross-promote, share production resources, and hopefully raise all boats across their network.
So we've got a few minutes left. I'd love to throw it to the room to ask any questions that you might have.
2 mics.
Two mics.
Stunned silence.
Please keep the stampede to a minimum.
I can do they're overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed.
I have a quick, simple question. So, you have a new original content coming out. You have to focus. You have to promote. You have X amount of energy or X amount of dollars. So, do you throw it out there in all the platforms, YouTube, Vimeo, whatever you can get your hands on, or do you focus on one and do it really well?
I mean, I think that it depends on the content, quite frankly. If you are a studio, you need to not do an exclusive deal. You need to put it out everywhere because you have different subscribers, whether you're at Voodoo or Apple or what have you. I think that for originals, it's a good question. I personally would go to the place that monetizes the best. I think that you don't want to waste views on other platforms that aren't going to monetize at all. Unless part of your strategy maybe is to do some sort of wide release and then drive people back to, hey, you know what? This has been great, Vimeo, but everything's going to be in YouTube starting on February, whatever. But
For the sake of argument, you're not interested in monetizing.
then get it out as many places as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I mean, if you're at the very beginning of a digital adventure and you're trying to create awareness for yourself, either as a content creator or for a specific piece of content, and there is no big cash component, then yeah, I think in the beginning it's a good idea to, get it out as many places as possible. But if you're putting your business hat on, then we've always been advocates of put it in places that make the best business deal. And to some of the comments that were made earlier here today, put it in the places where you feel like it can really be promoted in whatever way that's possible. But if you go on to insert name of big site here and it's lost, and after 2 or 3 weeks you see that there's 16 views, that happens a lot in our life, and I think that's a big signal to content creators that say that's largely a waste of time unless you can go back into that business and make a deal with them to figure out how there's a way to either get the attention that it deserves, or the money that both you and the distributor can make. But to just kind of upload all over the places, 5-6 years ago, it kind of worked. There was a chance for things to go to that V word that I never use, but the V word's almost impossible to get these days, and so it's really, I think, important to put the business hat on.
The V word.
So yeah, I mean, don't forget that revenue for content is views times the CPM times the sell-through rate. But if you're starting out, so you know, you have to think about those things too. But if you're starting out and experimenting, if you knew about the content and the platforms, you would put the content where you had the most focused audience. If you don't know that yet, you should spread it as broadly as you can, but have an audience development plan and test and look at the metrics. We give really detailed metrics about what's happening, where your traffic's coming from, and other sites, you know, do the same. That you will learn a hell of a lot from that about where your next piece of content that's similar to that should go.
See, and just echoing what Graham was saying,
And put it on YouTube.
to show that we're in agreement on everything, is
He's going for the meeting again.
Yeah, come on, too late now.
the point that he was just making, and I think it's a super important one, because all the stuff that I would get pitched all the time at Lionsgate, it's like, where is your audience? How are you going to find your audience? Who is this for? And it really forces you creatively and business-wise to really look and say, because if you throw it out there on everything, the chances of you getting any views are somewhere between slim and none.
Yeah.
And unless the V word happens, and that's very rare. So the thing is let's say you were making a show that was the history of the fish hook. And so it sounds boring, okay? Who cares? However, you start to go out and do research and you find out, you know what, there are 14 million people every day who are on the internet going to places about fish hooks. And so what you do is you start to develop the show and you say, hey, wait, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get them to put it out, et cetera, et cetera. And what you suddenly have is you don't have YouTube, you don't have this, or maybe you put it on YouTube, but what you're really doing is you're targeting and saying, I'm going to get to that core audience that ignites the fuse.
And if you're, sorry.
Because I was just going to say,
I thought
because
you were going to say hooks the fish.
hooks the fish. Because the first issue is you've got to build that core audience that wants to see your content. And if you never get to that point, forget about it.
Otherwise known as an underserved audience.
Yes, exactly.
And if you're brave enough, and if the content's not already developed, involve that core audience in the development of the content in some way. Use social media, use outreach, have them give you feedback as you're developing the content, because it will help you make content that will better serve that core audience. And guess what as well? It starts to build a core audience who are engaged, right, with this piece of content. You see the most successful people on YouTube do this all the time, like Freddie Wong, right? He's funding, you know, he's using a Kickstarter to like fund and co-fund his content with a collective too, actually. But, you know, he's reaching out, using the community to be involved in creating this content. So before they even start writing this stuff, they've got people who are, you know, in a small way rooting for it and actually financially invested in its success.
Next question.
Well, first of all, I love your audience development plan. I think it's awesome. I think comparing you guys to indie filmmakers, they've discovered that they can't treat their films as one-off businesses anymore. They've got to collect fans, friends, and followers. And I think in the world of television, we have to do the same thing. That's collecting those Twitter followers, the Facebook friends, and all the other platforms, and taking them from one project to the next. We've got to, because it's so cluttered out there, right? I have one big question, though. If YouTube put in $100 million to create these premium channels, did all they get were the rights to it on YouTube? Did they get any other rights with this programming?
So I don't want to go into too many details, right, about the deal structure, but YouTube didn't take any rights from the content creators as part of these deals. The IP stays with the content creator. We did ask for a period of exclusivity on YouTube for distribution for obvious reasons. And in terms of the audience development plans, we asked for those, and we asked for those in a really detailed fashion from these channels that provided it to us. But I should say this, and I haven't said this already, that is an area we will help you, right, as a platform. We have, I don't know if anyone saw Lance Padel, who spoke yesterday, but we have a Next Lab. They're in charge of open sourcing how to make content work on YouTube to help out content creators. There's a playbook. There's a drop-in session here down the hall. And in fact, today from 5 until 6, I'm going to be there as well to do office hours for anyone to drop in and ask questions about how to make content work on YouTube or how to partner with us.
There's an emerging market, and I think that there's a missing link between the demand and the supply. And in Hollywood, over the last 5 years, 3D stereoscopic films have become a big player in making films, have a wider audience and make more money. Over the last year, we've seen direct TV connection with stereoscopic monitors. LG's released a 3D cell phone. And YouTube has a lot of R&D and available ways of distributing 3D stereoscopic content, either through anaglyph or side-by-side. But how is there a possibility of getting a 3D stereoscopic channel with YouTube? Is that something that would just happen through the normal partner process? I was asking Tom Sly about this earlier. How can stereoscopic content creators get more involved in bridging this gap between the end user and the content creators?
I would like to take that offline and talk to someone in the partner drop by if you want to come by afterwards. We've definitely experimented with 3D in the player and all kinds of different 3D I don't know all the technical terms for. So it's definitely available for upload, and yeah, we would like to talk to you about it more, and we can connect you with someone. There are obviously people, engineers and video engineers, who know a lot more about the 3D process in the YouTube player than I do.
Very good.
The only, excuse me, the only other thing I'd add to that is that I feel pretty confident in saying that within maybe this year, but certainly by next year, glassless 3D viewing capability, particularly on pads and mobile devices, will be happening. And that's, I think, going to be a pretty profound, I'm not a huge believer in 3D, frankly, but I think glassless 3D in small format screens is something that can have some compelling product and built around it. So I think that's an interesting area to look at.
Well, with or without glasses, it's a compelling area to investigate.
Right, but most people aren't going to carry 3D glasses in their pocket with their mobile phones, and they can just whip them out and look at it for a while. So I think when it's glassless, it's going to have quite a
Rob does.
big difference.
So before we run out of time, question in the back. Thank you.
Obviously, the topic is programming for an internet audience, but the real money's, frankly, usually in pay TV, syndication, network pickup, and otherwise, at least at this point. So I'm curious, as far as programming, for these various devices, if you're doing well, and otherwise your goal in the back of your head, I think most producers, is to get picked up. Seems like Lisa Kudrow probably didn't do that show online just because she loved doing online video. Not that she needs the money, but thanks to friends. But to look at syndication or TV pickup and otherwise for her show. So I'm curious, with the holdbacks or the strategy and otherwise, we deal with a lot of clients that have pay TV syndication and they want to use or over the top as a promotional vehicle and otherwise, and maybe even revenue, but they certainly don't want to give up their bread and butter of high dollar syndication. So I'm curious in terms of programming these channels, even on YouTube, when you get folks that come to you who have existing syndication and want to do some things on your network, like what, maybe in generalities, but otherwise, what is the particular strategy that you employ, maybe even Kurt, because of your background?
I'll give you a real quick answer because I know I see our time's running out here. The quick answer is I wouldn't develop something for the online medium without having the opportunity to distribute it through other platforms any more than I would make a movie just to be shown in movie theaters and not go to home video and not go to television and not be sold internationally, et cetera. So I think there's a big flaw that's been in existence to date of, well, online's the only destination. the Machinima Bite Me series that we're producing will live in webisode series on Machinima. It will live as half-hour programs on FearNet, which is one of the networks that Lionsgate owns. It will live as a 1 hour or hour-and-a-half feature program for sales internationally. And that's the only way we could make those numbers work. If we were relying just on YouTube CPMs to drive a high-quality horror show, it wouldn't work.
So the other degree of freedom that a talent has, I mean, in order to figure things out, I mean, the development dollars are really, really high. And so, you know, if you have an idea as an artist and you want to be able to go and try it out, I mean, it is, whether it's over the top or, you know, YouTube or what have you, it's a good way to do it. And then you have a proof of concept that you can then, you know, with an audience that you can then bring to any sort of studio or what have you.
Yeah, it seems like the data behind that approach, at least with the folks that we're working with, even if they have a significant presence on pay TV and otherwise, the data that they're gathering from over the top proves out an audience for various new shows or existing shows that they can refresh, and otherwise it seems like that's very valuable to their overall strategy.
Rob, do you want to say something?
Well, no, I would agree with the statement. I mean, you know, where would you rather be? In a bathrobe with a script on your desk, or online trying to see if elements of that have an opportunity to gain an audience? And that's why I think you're seeing a lot more top talent go to online. I mean, even an announcement as big as the Tom Hanks announcement a few days ago proves that, you know, there are a lot of projects that people have who are able to get the big green light that don't. And so there's an opportunity to get the yes a lot faster and get to an audience, obviously, in businesses like ours. But the last point I'll make is it's really important, even though the content might have wings and travel, I think you've got to figure out in the initiation of a project, like we said earlier, who is it for? What exactly, you know, are you trying to accomplish with that? And if you want to start online, then I think that there's a DNA that's a little different than forcing a would-be television project onto the web. I think you got to really give that some thought.
And before we close out, one thing I would suggest is to flip the argument that online in itself can be a business. There's a really great article on Sharon Waxman's blog about Freddie Wong, who's a partner of ours at Collective Digital Studio. So if you just Google The Wrap and Freddie Wong, the article will come up, and I think it'll be very interesting to read the perspective of a very successful director-creator who came out of the online world, has plenty of opportunities in other medias, and is very happy with some of the really cool things happening on YouTube and online in general. Thank you very much.